Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm a grassroots bicycle racer. So, bicycle racing. Most of bicycle racing today is focused on pedaling. So when you go to a bicycle race, what do you see? Aid stations, support vehicles, mechanics, everything the racer needs should something go wrong with their bike. And pros, of course, take this to its logical extreme. But it wasn't always this way, even in the pros. In the early days of the Tour de France, racers were expected to fix their own gear. Like this guy's got a spare tire over his shoulders, he's got a toolkit behind his seat, he's ready for anything. And he was also expected to feed himself at local cafes. And so grassroots racing is unsupported racing. It's all about you and the bike and the open road. Racers can accept help from each other, but they cannot accept outside help. And this means foraging at convenience stores. The real challenge here is to find something appealing that's going to stay down for the rest of the race. Gummy worms are my favorite. There's also no GPS navigation allowed in grassroots racing. It's all paper maps or paper cue sheets. You know what they say, it's not an adventure until someone gets lost. My start in gravel racing came about 5 or 6 years ago in a little winter race down in Iowa called the Triple D. This is 64 miles of snowmobile trails in the middle of January. This race is totally at the mercy of whatever Mother Nature wants to do. And sure enough, my first race, 8 inches of snow the night before. I pushed my bike more than I rode it that day. After 6 hours, I said, screw this, and gave up about a third of the way through. The second year wasn't a whole lot better. Another failure. I made it halfway that time. Yay. Failure is a cruel mistress, but there is no better teacher in this entire world. It forced me to rethink everything I thought about how I might finish one of these races. So I went out and I got one of those fancy fat bikes, and I got serious about my training, and I rode no matter what the weather did. And the third year, I grew a righteous beard, and Ruby, the pretty red snow bike, and I took 6th place. And that is the smile of someone who is hooked. Hooked on success, hooked on new friendships, and hooked on grassroots racing. The really wonderful thing about it is that there's this delicate balance between competition and just having this thing be a test of yourself. And so there's a lot of camaraderie among people who do this stuff. So speaking of challenges, challenging yourself, this year I signed on for one of the granddaddies of the grassroots racing scene, Trans-Iowa. And this is a very long race, and it takes place at the end of April. So that means that training starts at the beginning of March. And so when Mother Nature says at the beginning of March, would you like some snow? You say, yes, thank you. May I have a headwind with that? You don't just test the weather, though. You also test every piece of equipment, every piece of clothing. You test your stomach at the convenience store in hopes that anything that could go wrong will go wrong during training and not during the race. And yet, one Saturday morning at the end of April, you find yourself on Main Street in Grinnell, Iowa, wondering, well, just exactly how is this going to work? How am I going to go 325 miles by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon? And it turns out that the answer is you pedal, and you keep pedaling. And it doesn't matter what you run across, smooth gravel, chunky gravel, giant farm equipment, giant pickups, giant farm dogs, or giant hills, you just keep going. And you don't look ahead to the end of the race, you look ahead to the next intersection. Here's one of those hills. Now, you don't go charging up this with everything you've got, because by about the third one, you would want to lay down in the ditch and have a good cry. It turns out that pacing yourself is as much a mental game as it is a physical game. And by sunset on Saturday, we were starting to look a little rough and feel a little rough. This is about halfway. Unfortunately, both of the friends that I started with dropped out early in the night, but I, for whatever reason, kept going. all the way through the morning of the next day. And this guy, M-Dub from Lincoln, Nebraska, tried just about everything he knew to get me to finish this race. But unfortunately, around noon, my body said, enough is enough, no more hills, and I dropped out 11 miles shy of the finish. Failure is a cruel teacher, but you'll learn things from her that you won't learn anywhere else. Thank you.